Hello, hello, and welcome to another Wordiful Wednesday. Today we are talking about extreme ownership, and it is by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, and it is amazing. It is written by two U.S. Navy SEALs who, in a nutshell, take the leadership qualities that they see and have experienced in the field, in battle, in everyday SEAL life, and have related them to not only to the business world, but to leadership in general. So it's a really awesome overarching book. I have recommended it already to my father, who is a small business owner, as well as to my teenage son, because it's not just applicable to business, it is applicable to life and to leadership as a whole. I was introduced to one of the authors, Jocko Willink, through, and you may be tired of my Tim Ferriss references, but through Tim Ferriss's podcast, The Tim Ferriss Show. And I will link that podcast below because it is super jam-packed, full of really good information as well, beyond or aside from what's in this book. But I was just so blown away by Jocko and just his presence, even via podcast. And I was just ready to dig in to this book and find out what it was all about. Now, I am not much of a war buff or military strategist kind of reader, and this book does have a slew of really powerful stories from the war fields, and it's so easy for someone like me to glaze over those kinds of things. But I knew for each section and each story that there was going to be a correlation between that and the leadership quality that the authors were lifting up for that section. So that was just really interesting to me, and for me, because this is told from a U.S. Navy SEAL perspective, it just brought the whole leadership strategy full circle. So it added to the story rather than taking away from it, even for someone like me who wouldn't necessarily be turned on by things like that. However, that's one of the big selling points that I gave to my teenage son, who is 17, in reading this book and recommending it to him, because that's the kind of thing he loves to read about. And the leadership qualities and the different strategies that they lift up and the way that they marry the two together will just be an added bonus, kind of like sneaking it in the backside as a parent, getting my son to read this, having the added bonus of really learning something and having a real takeaway beyond just a military, a historical book. So that's really cool. Additionally, I just wanted to share a couple of the biggest takeaways that I had from this extreme ownership book. Not as a way to give the entire book away, because I want you to read this book, but just as a nice little icing on the cake and from a book review kind of standpoint. So let me share a couple of my favorite things just in the way of quotes and how they relate to me or how they spoke to me. And then I really encourage you to check this book out, to purchase it, to check it out at the library as I did, and experience it for yourself and see how it speaks to you. The first of which is, leaders accept complete ownership over themselves and their team, the good, the bad, and the gray matter in between. This is an overarching theme of Jocko and Leif's leadership teaching, that you will take extreme ownership at all costs over what you're responsible for. Whether you were touching that point of responsibility or not, if you or your team did something, whether it fouled up, whether it was great, whether it was a win or a loss, whether it was somewhere in between, it's on your shoulders as that leader. And that was such a powerful bring home from a leadership perspective and a military perspective. To me, it applies even in the family unit, it applies at work, it applies in organizations, in friendships, it applies across the board. That's what I love about this particular leadership book, is the message throughout the book could apply to so many different areas of life and so many different industries. So another takeaway quote that I brought from the book was, as a leader, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. When setting expectations, no matter what has been said or written, if substandard performance is accepted and no one is held accountable, if there are no consequences, that poor performance becomes the new standard. I thought about this. This just blew me away, even again, relating to parenthood, relating to being a mother and a parent. Sometimes we get a little bit lazy. Sometimes I get a little bit lazy. And sometimes I allow things that I know that my kids know are rules slip because I'm tired. I've had a long day. I'm over it. I don't want to tell them no one more time over that same exact thing. You know where I'm coming from. That happens in the business industry. That happens in all industries, all walks of life. But it's what we tolerate that determines that new bar that we're setting. So are you going to tolerate that, or are you going to continue to hold your team, your family, your organization to a higher level? If you aren't winning, then you aren't making the right decisions. I thought that was super powerful, super succinct, and true across the board. There are times when we think we can be doing all the right things but still not getting over that hurdle, and we kid ourselves to think that we are doing all the right things, that we're already doing everything right. We're kidding ourselves. And that's a huge takeaway from this book. Even as quick and bite-sized as that little quote is, it packs a huge punch. If you're not succeeding at something, you are doing something wrong. You need to backtrack. You need to figure out what that is, whether it has to do with your team as a whole, whether it's a weak link, whether you're the weak link. Taking extreme ownership is all about owning what your team is doing, owning your position, and owning all outcomes. So if you're not winning, you're the one who is not making all the right decisions. Another quote, the leader must explain not just what to do, but why. And I love this because if you are on my website ever, then lately you've been seeing that I also have been reading the Start With Why. Start With Why. Here we go. By Simon Sinek. I've also been tweeting a lot of quotes from this book because I've enjoyed it so much. And it's all about not just going through the tasks, not just going through the checklist, but getting behind it, first determining the why we do what we do, then from there take it and figure out the how and the what. So right now, from this book, I love that these two books are coming together right now and that I was reading them at essentially the same time. So Jocko and Leif and Simon all want to remind us that there needs to be a purpose behind what we're doing. We need to start with the why and then go from there and figure out the what and the how. And to share it with our team from that perspective as well. Not just have it inside, not just have it in your own brain, not just, keeping it to yourself, but sharing the purpose behind what you're doing with your team, with your family, with your organization. Ego clouds and disrupts everything. The planning process, the ability to take good advice, and the ability to accept constructive criticism. How true is this? Whenever we let our ego get in the way, which completely goes against this extreme ownership that they're talking about. I mean, it pounds it in the ground over and again, and it's awesome the way they do it. But ego just gets in the way. It says, I'm right, you're wrong, no matter what. And it completely stifles us in every area of life. So not only is ego limiting in the fact that it removes us, it separates us from others, and it acts against us in that way, but it also stifles our creativity, and it puts blinders on us to keep us from seeing things in the bigger picture and realistically. And one more quote from the book, and then I want you to go out and I want you to get this book yourself, and I want you to read it cover to cover. It's awesome, it's powerful, and it will apply to you no matter what. But the last quote that I want to share really bad is, as a leader, it doesn't matter how well you feel you have presented the information or communicated an order, plan, tactic, or strategy. If your team doesn't get it, you have not kept things simple and you have failed. Now, again, this applies to the family, this applies to business, this applies to everything you are doing. So often, I am so guilty of this, relaying something that I think is just clear cut. I do this on my videos even, and I'm sorry because I ramble and I talk so much. But in giving even instructions to my children, or relaying something to a contractor, or talking business even within our small business. If the other person doesn't get it, no matter how clear you think you're being, it is not clear. Bottom line. And that's taking extreme ownership. Own the understanding, not only your understanding, but you need to own the understanding of the person you're talking to, that you're communicating with. And if they don't get it, you haven't put it in simple enough terms. You haven't communicated correctly. It's not on them, it is on you. Please check this book out. It is massively awesome. I think that this is actually going to be a Christmas gift for a lot of people this year, just because it applies over and over and over again to so many different areas and so many walks of life. So I encourage you, even if it's just a free checkout at the library with maybe a 25-cent fine, it is totally worth a pickup and just devouring this Extreme Ownership by Jocko and Leif. I will put the link to this Amazon order in the description box, and I hope that you have enjoyed another book review. Please check out other book reviews. I'm trying to do them every Wednesday for Wordiful Wednesday, and I just really appreciate you joining me today. Until I see you again, I hope you're making it a great day.